I recently read an article that said the majority of people in the trades are 50 years or older and planning to retire in the next 10 years. Without schools like Tri-County replenishing the pipeline, we're in trouble.
Anyone who's tried to get a plumber or a carpenter to their house in the past 3 or 4 years and has to wait 6 months knows the high demand that these fields are in right now.
Tri-County is a regional vocational technical high school. We serve students from Sherburne all the way to Seekonk. We have 16 career vocational programs that we offer students in grades 9 through 12, and we also have a very robust adult education program as well.
Tri-County is a place that prepares you for the real world. You leave here with a set of skills that regular high schools don't give you.
From our point now, we can immediately go out into the field once we graduate. Everybody else, they still need to take 1 or 2 years to actually learn the trade that they're doing. We're doing that now, as well as having the normal high school experience.
It's very important to have a school like this in your community. It just provides more education and more of a hands-on boost in life.
Over the last 20 years, I've seen a tremendous evolution in vocational education and the value it brings to all levels of learners and back to the communities that the kids come from. These kids are leaving Tri-County ahead of their peers because not only are they ready for post-secondary education, but they also have a skill set that's marketable in today's society.
I mean, the school is very old.
It's falling apart.
There's no like walls caving in or anything like that, but it is decaying and it's noticeable.
The current state's really old, and it affects our learning completely. It's digital, everything's with technology, and we don't learn that stuff because we don't have the equipment for it.
Tri-County is a 50-year-old facility that is used from 7:30 in the morning until 10 o'clock at night. The facility is failing.
A lot of the issues with the building are behind the walls. Plumbing, electrical.
When the building was built, they decided to put all the piping under the slab. Great idea, out of the way, maintenance free, until 50 years later when the pipes start to rupture.
We had a massive flood 2 years ago that wiped out a bunch of our equipment. It took out our gym for a while. Every day there's something else that we have to duct tape back together.
It's hard to teach when you have, broken water pipe in the room, or that the electrical circuits are overloaded so much that you can't use the equipment that you need.
There was a preconception that this project would be a renovation addition project because it appears to be a solid, well-built facility that should have a long life to it and perhaps only needed a few adjustments.
We applied at the MSBA for a renovation project to this building. As part of the application, the MSBA requires that you examine renovation addition, or a new building, just to be able to see economically what it looks like. It wasn't until that time that we realized building a new building would cost just as much as a renovation.
We did extensive research. We contacted other schools that had done repair renovations. We found out, how does this affect the students? And they told us a number of things. One, it affects your students for 4 years. It's brutally disruptive. They all told us, we wish we had a new building.
In the proposed new school, it's a fairly compact site. There's a 3-story building, which is actually more efficient both from an energy and a circulation flow. The academic classrooms, for the most part, are located literally across the corridor from the career tech shops, even the noisy kind of industrial ones. And we've been able to do this in some other schools safely and effectively to separate the sound and acoustics so that those students and those teachers can collaborate.
It's very impressive. I think it's innovative. It has a new sort of concept to it where we have different departments and different shops, academic, vocational, all together. It's a different philosophy, and I think that's a really exciting prospect for our school community.
I think it'll benefit our students and the community because to come to a vocational school is an option that builds a lot of perspective for the students and helps them decide what they really want to do with the rest of their lives. It's a huge advantage.
I think the one takeaway for me would be the option of rebuilding at Tri-County is really not an option. We need to do something. We can't let the facility just continue to deteriorate and then expect that we're going to turn out high quality people to fill the needs of the industry in this area. It's absolutely at a point where it needs to be addressed. We're lucky we're not at the school, because I'll tell you that we haven't had this presentation one time without there being some sort of a major catastrophe with the technology. And it was unfortunate. We had a big community presentation back in June, and we had North TV there, and we had the cable company from Franklin, and they came up on stage to hook up their electronics. And then when we went to play everything, it wouldn't work. And we couldn't even get the screen to come on. And it was a half-hour delay. I mean, you know, it's hard enough to get up and talk in front of people. Imagine then for a half-hour delay of people that, you know, don't want to listen to what you're talking about. So anyway, this is a beautiful facility, and we're so happy to be here. But Tri-County, if you have not been to the campus, is located off of Route 140 in Franklin, right across from the big plaza where the Stop and Shop is in Franklin. It's hard to notice the school because it's tucked away in the woods up on top of the hill. You really have to drive in to the property in order to be able to see it. But it's there, and it's been there for 50 years. And Tri-County serves the students from Sherburne all the way to Seekonk. So our students come from, our community students that belong to the district come from Franklin, Medfield, Medway, Millis, Norfolk, North Attleboro, Plainville, Seekonk, Sherburne, Walpole, and Wrentham. Now, Walpole has been part of Tri-County since before it was built. Mr. Hegler was on our school committee for almost 50 years, 49 years. He was from Walpole. He was one of the founding principals in the school when it was first thought of. In fact, when I started the job a couple of years ago, we were up in the records room. Upstairs, there's this records room that has every record ever printed. And what I found in there was a book that it looked like a photo album. So I opened it up, and it was all the articles from when they were talking about building the school. And there was a picture of Mr. Hegler on top of a dirt pile with a cigarette behind his back. You could see the cigarette behind his back. And he said that they were so out of breath from climbing the hill, you know, and but that's where they decided they were going to build the school. And he served on a school committee until just last year. And then Mr. Lee was appointed to take his place on the school committee. And then Mr. Sullivan's been on the school committee for 5-6 years now. So you do have great representation from Walpole. Not all of our communities have 2 school committee members. We have 2 from Walpole, but most of the others have only 1. So your community gets 2 voices at any of our meetings. But at any rate, those are the communities that send to Tri-County. We do also have a handful of students from outside of this district. If we have room in some of the programs, we open it up to students from Uxbridge or Bellingham, Blackstone, and Milford, and so forth. So we do, if you happen to have known a student who lives in another town, we do have students from time to time from those other towns. So back in 2015, Tri-County wrote an application to what's called the Mass School Building Authority, which I'm sure everybody's aware of now because they help build all of the schools. We wrote to the Mass School Building Authority in 2015 asking for their assistance in refurbishing the Tri-County school building. They were denied. Wrote again in 2016, it was denied. 2017, denied, until 2020. When Mr. Mushnick, he was on the hiring committee for me when they were interviewing superintendents, he was very clear to me that this was going to be a remodel, that we were not considering a new building because he and the committee really wanted to have a remodel of the existing building. My background, I came from Southeastern Vocational School, right up Route 495. I was there for 23 years. And during my time there, we had done a remodel, a significant remodel. And remodeling a school building with 1,000 kids in it, particularly a VOTEC building, is a very difficult thing to do. It takes 4 years, and you have to move everybody all over the place all the time, have lunch and breakfast under a tent. I mean, it's not an easy thing to do. But it was my background. So I think part of the part that they liked about me as the candidate was that I had done that before. But the Mass School Building Authority, when you get invited in finally in 2020, they make you examine whether or not you have a new school, whether or not you rebuild the current school, or if it's more beneficial to keep the current school and build onto it. You have to examine all three of those. We said, no, we're not interested in a new school. And they said, well, if you're going to be part of our program, you need to look at a new school because it might be more economical to build a new school. So we did, and they were right. As it turns out, what we found in what was called the feasibility study, took a year and a half to do, to just do repairs to the current 50-year-old building. Now you remember in 1973 when it was built, there was no code requirement for sprinkler systems. The lot of the things that our building has a deficit in were to code when it was built in 1973, but in 2023 it is not to code. So in order to just bring the current facility to code is $165 million. And we don't get any reimbursement from the state for that. The second option, which would be to do a renovation, came in at $279 million. And that's renovating the current facility, bringing it to code, and then renovating classroom and vocational spaces. To renovate and add an additional instructional space came in at $282 million. And to do the new construction, build the whole brand new building, came in at $279 million. So the committee at that time decided that it would be best for us to pursue the new model because you get a new building rather than a remodeled 50-year-old building. These were some of the things that were taken into consideration, of course. The site itself, there's a lot of work. Again, it's 50 years old. And the building itself, it looks nice. It looks great from the outside until you really look at it. When you really start to look at it, you start to notice some of the things that are the issues. The building site itself, now back in 1973, that sort of corrugated outside of the building looked really nice in 1973, but what we discover now is that it seeps energy. It leaks energy, basically. So that's one of the issues for us, the building envelope. And there's really no way to fix that. So that was one of the bigger deterrents with renovating the old building. As I said, the accessibility and the code were an issue. And then, of course, the infrastructure. In 1973, nobody had heard of the internet. Never did anyone think that all of our equipment, including the classroom English and math classrooms, you would need to have a computer to learn in them. But that's what we're faced with in 2023. And that building is not equipped to handle the load of the internet, even with the upgrades and adding more power to it. The plumbing, the fire, the electrical, and the mechanical systems are all out of code. So the Tri-County building itself, as I said, it's up on this hill across the street from Stop and Shop, and the building sits in the middle of the property. The proposal for the new building is to put it right here on the back side, kind of to the right of, closest to that yellow line. It's currently where our solar panels are. The reason the committee decided to pick that site to put the new building is because all other areas on the property are literally next to someone's living room. And we didn't want to put a brand new building when someone's getting up, in the middle of the night and they see into the building next door. It's not very neighborly friendly. So the option was to move the solar panels and then put the building sort of in the woods behind where the current building is. So that's now up here in the front part of the building, which is where the existing building is now, would be made a parking lot, and then the fields would remain over to the side of the property. Some of the other issues that Tri-County has right now, if you have kids or grandkids that went to Tri-County, you'll know that the track has been condemned. It's all broken. And just the week before last, the building inspector was there for the football field. The football grandstand and press box is sinking. So that's been now taped off, and we can't use that as well, and the football field itself has issues. So the site where we'd put the new building would need to have a lot of site work done to it, a lot of the earth dug up, a lot of the, there'd have to be some blasting that happens. And the idea with this project would be to take the earth from that area and move it over and spread it out where the fields are in order to repurpose it, so we're not paying to truck it off and then paying to truck new dirt in to replace the football field or the soccer fields. So we'd have to pay for both of those things too. The building itself, rectangle-shaped building. We're keeping the same programs that we have right now. Plumbing, HVAC, of course, automotive. We do service outside cars in our automotive shop. All of those what are called higher bay programs would be on the first floor so that deliveries would be easier to them. And of course, if you needed to drive vehicles in them, you would be able to. The academic classrooms, because Tri-County is a high school, students graduate with their vocational certificate and their high school diploma. So the academic classrooms would be located right across from the shop programs, the vocational programs, so that they could collaborate between the vocational programs and academics. This is another interesting piece of a new building, is that you see down here on the bottom left, there's the main entrance for students, and then on the bottom right, there's a separate entrance for customers. Again, back in 1973, we didn't have to worry about school shootings, all of school safety pieces. It wasn't something that anyone had to consider, but unfortunately, we have to consider that every day. And we have programs that are open to the public. Our restaurant's open to the public. Our cosmetology, I know that a lot of folks from Walpole come. Our cosmetology program is open to the public for the hairdressing and so forth. We have a child care, early education for toddlers to 3-year-olds that's open to the public. And we have an adult education nursing program that's in that same area too. So that part of the building would have a separate entrance. Right now, if you come to Tri-County, you basically just walk in. And once you sign in to go to the restaurant, you're just in the free open building. This model would give us the added security that we need in this day and age, unfortunately. The second floor of the building, again, the same concept with the lower bay shops, like our health and medical and dental program, our engineering program, legal and protective program, all on the second floor with that same thing with the academic classrooms across the hallway from them. And then we are 1,000 students and will continue to be 1,000 students. So for the academic piece, we still need a few more classrooms. So this building would be 3 stories on one side of it and 2 stories on the other. That additional third floor would give us extra academic classrooms. Dan, do you want to go over this part, Dan? I thought I had.
Hi, once again, I'm Dan Haynes, School Business Manager. It's great to be here in Walpole. I love this space. Some nice bright light out here. So Dr. Maguire is my boss, so hopefully I do okay here. So how are we going to move this process forward? There's going to be a district election. As we drove into town today, we saw there's a big sign in the center advertising this election on October 24th from noon to 8 o'clock. And the process, if you think about your normal elections in Walpole, you're voting on town business. This is a district-wide election. So the way they look at this is all 11 communities are going to vote at the same time in their own precincts. But the total vote to carry this is all of the voters that turn out in the 11 communities. It's 50%, it's simple majority. 50% plus 1 will carry the vote. From there, the district will issue a 30-year bond. And we will have debt assessments to the 11 communities based on October 1 enrollment annually. In our district agreement, there's an assumed 5 pupil minimum. So right now, in fiscal 22, Sherburne only had 1 student. So they would be assessed for 5 students in the capital or debt assessment for this project. This is a look at our enrollment, comparing the 10-1-22 enrollment to the 10-1-21 enrollment. And you can see, Walpole's about 10% of the total. So you would be assessed at about 10% of that debt load on an annual basis. But that could change. That's not a stagnant number because your enrollment changes over time. And it would be each year's enrollment would determine what that assessment would look like for the town. And that's it. So I think we want to open it up for questions.
Does your cost estimate include demolishing the existing building?
Yes, it does. It is. Yep.
I'll ask another one.
Okay.
How did the MSBA determine only $82 million?
Yeah.
A larger percentage.
Yeah. 82.7 million is the reimbursement, maximum reimbursement.
So repeat the question so that people.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, in case you didn't hear. So how did the MSBA determine that our maximum reimbursement would only be $82.7 million? So our reimbursement rate is 56.56%. However, if you look at what the building costs per square foot in current dollars with inflation, it's over $800 per square foot. The MSBA only reimburses at $392 per square foot for eligible costs. Not all of our costs are eligible. That's with any building project. So that does bring that, we're 56.56, but it brings the effective rate to just under 29%. It's a good question.
Well, also, the reimbursement rate varies between districts. So, for instance, there's a building being built in Fall River right now, and their reimbursement rate is much higher because they're a gateway community. There are a lot of factors that go into determining reimbursement rates, from demographics to average annual income to property values. That's what brought ours down to only 56.6, with a actual reimbursement rate averaging 29.2%, I believe is the number. It's a convoluted system that we wish we could change, but it's just it's how MSBA does it.
Why is there no federal funding?
So her question was, why is there no federal funding? With it being a public school, Tri-County is a public school, just like all of our town schools, and we do get federal funding to run the vocational piece of it. So we do get federal grant funding for that, and there are funds that trickle their way through to the states to support schools in general. But it's a public school, so it's treated the same way. The difference is this building was built in 1973 with a combination of grants, right? And the agreement at the time, there were 28 of them built, VOTEC schools, all over the state, roughly the same time. And the agreement with them all was that when they needed to be rebuilt, that at that time, the towns would share the cost of them in however their agreement was made. The agreement with Tri-County was that any capital cost or rebuilding cost would be divided up based on student enrollment. So the more students that a town has, the more percentage they pay. There are other districts, like Whittier up in Haverhill, who's also in this process. Their agreement is that they just divide it evenly among the towns. So they might have a town that sends 3 students, but they're responsible for an even percentage as a town that sends 700 students. Yeah, so ours is different. The Tri-County Regional Agreement calls for us, that's the other piece about the election, the question on the 24th, is that people have asked over and over about why is it only 12 o'clock to 8 o'clock. And the reason is because at the time when they established the agreement, they were working under what is called Massachusetts General Law 16N, and that law dictates that the vote would be between 4 and 8 hours. It doesn't give us, within the law, the ability to have a 12-hour election like your towns do. This is specific between 4 and 8 hours. So we met with the town clerks a handful of times, and the town clerks all wanted it to be the most hours as possible, which is why it's the 8 hours. And then we went back and forth about what's the appropriate time. We wanted to be able to allow people coming home from work to vote, so we didn't want to do, 8 to 2. So it was 12 to 8 was established at that time. Yeah.
An alternative answer to why there's no federal funding is ask your senators, ask your congressmen. If we keep asking, there may be money. But if you don't ask, and we do ask, we are always asking, it's just not. Well, if you're gonna fund this school here, then you have to fund that school there. You have to, so that's why it's done by the state. And there's funding. That's what the MSBA is state funding. We're also looking, again, Dr. Maguire said, we're looking at grants, and we've asked the state to allocate more funds for these projects. There may be money later on. There is not more money right now. There potentially, so this is a long-term project. We're at vote now. If the vote carries, then we will start some of our early buying. We will start bonding early for some basic things, but the real money won't be spent for another few years. In a few years, there might be more money. They'll never be less than what they've promised us, but there could be more. We urge you to call your state senators, call your state reps. There were 28 buildings built. So the history of vocational education was there wasn't any in the 60s. So the state came up with this idea and built all these schools for free, and then handed them over. They literally are all falling apart all at the same time. There's probably been a half dozen rebuilt at this point or remodeled.
There have been 2 rebuilt, probably a handful remodeled that are still 50 years old now, but remodeled. And that's the part that we're a little bit worried about, is that if this doesn't pass, and then we need to start making renovations to the school in order to repair the things that are broken, it automatically will trigger the code requirement in Massachusetts, which as you start to fix things, you now have to bring them to code. So now we'll be coming out and asking for the $165 million over time to be able to bring the building to code. And 5 years from now, looking at rebuilding the building again. So it's kind of the timing is awful. Everybody, it's always awful. It was awful in 2015 when you thought that it was going to be a remodel, and it's just been progressively getting worse over the last, 8 years at this point. Yep.
You already asked.
Well, thank you all for doing this project. I think it's really important. It really is important for students in the middle school and the high school to have an option where they aren't forced to go to college for 4 years and have a $500,000 debt, and that impacts the rest of their lives. So congratulations for doing this. I hope it passes. My question is an academic question. Given the context of what's happening here and what's happening in society generally,
Yeah, so that's a great question. So as part of the standards for history, the Industrial Revolution really is all the way up is part of that. But we also have a program that so the way it works at Tri-County is 1 week the students will be in their vocational area, grades 9 and 11 together. While they're in their vocational area, grades 10 and 12 are in their academic classes, learning math, English, science, and so forth. And then the next week it flips. So each group has their 1 week of academics. In grades 9 and 10, the students have a program that's called the High School Experience, where they learn basically all of the transitional things coming into high school. But in grades 11 and 12, the students have a mandatory class that is called Career Essentials. In their Career Essentials class, they do everything from a lesson on the Industrial Revolution, including VOTEC education and where it came from and why it's so important, all the way to how to get and keep a job. In other words, stay off your phone, show up to work on time, those things. But those are the things that they learn in that class. But there is a history of vocational education component as part of that class. Yeah, which you won't find anywhere else. Yeah, but it is there in that one. Good question. Yeah. Go ahead. Hi. Yeah. So there's a couple, go ahead, you can answer that, Dan. And if you can't understand, Dan, then I'll try to say it.
Then
language.
I'm in trouble.
Yeah.
No, it will change based on that October 1st enrollment each year. It does not stay stagnant. And it makes sense because that means the students that are attending from the various communities are helping to pay that debt load while they're getting their education.
So now, this is where I kind of get geek out on this one. Medfield and Sherburne. The way that it works for the number of kids that come to Tri-County, that's also prescribed in the district agreement. And it's basically, you're entitled to the amount of seats based on the number of kids you have enrolled in schools. So if you take all of our 11 towns and add them up, whatever percentage of that whole group of students Walpole has would be the percentage of students in 9th grade they would be entitled to. Okay, so if there's 1,000 and you had 100 kids, you'd be entitled to 10% of the seats. But let me just go through this. But not all of our towns use their seats. So Walpole, Medfield, thank you. Medfield and Sherburne don't utilize their seats. So those seats now go back to the general pool. So you might see from time to time a swing, and it happened to Walpole a couple of years ago, where there was this increase of kids in Walpole. And then a couple of years later it happened in Medway. A couple of years later it was North Attleboro. It all sort of fluctuated because they don't use their seats. If we're trying to get them to participate in their vocational education a little bit more robustly, then Walpole would be able to look back to kindergarten and really make an educated decision of how many seats they would be entitled to. It's just the math that would be able to figure that piece of it out. There is some legislation right now, though, to talk about that talks about a 5-year rolling average for regional schools, because it's not just Tri-County that has this issue. A lot of the schools, even if it's just a regional school of 2 or 3 towns, not even a VOTEC school, there is some legislation right now that is asking for it to be a 5-year average so that towns can plan better and that there isn't this up and down. But the way that the assessment works is Mr. Haynes puts together based on the calculation, and then we'll call Mr. Johnson. Oftentimes Mr. Johnson calls first and asks, he's the first one of our 11 towns to call and say, what's the number? Yeah, well, he is. So, and that number of the current enrollment from last year would be for next year's budget here in Walpole. So there is some lead time with it. It's not that on October 1st, that's the number and there's no planning for it. It would actually be next year's budget. Go ahead. Yeah, so as it is right now, it's same thing coming in this year. It'll be about 10%. I think it's down. I don't want to say that it is, but
Currently we're at 92. This October of 23 enrollment.
It's hard to tell, and again, if you're yeah, so we can look at the historical, but it's more that we want to look going in the other direction. How many students do you have in the system, which is going down? So yeah. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah. So the life expectancy of the building brand new is a 50-year building is what we're calling it, a 50-year building. The remodel, it'd still be a 50-year-old building. So it'd be facing this again in another couple of years, especially because the outside of it's crumbling as well. And that corrugated, weaved, pretty brick from 1973, there's really nothing to spray on it to keep it from falling apart.
So I'm the official doom and gloom guy. I'm here to tell you what happens if the vote doesn't carry. So if the vote doesn't carry, we'll be entitled to another 120 days to re-educate and try again and have another vote. If that doesn't carry, we potentially could be given a delay. Most likely we would surrender our slot and the money for this building will go away from the state. They will give it to the next building that's in bad shape. We potentially could be invited back in over a period of time. Most schools struggle with that. It will trigger repairs. So repairs, the original slide showed it was $165 million to do updates to the building to keep it the way it is. This is no addition, no renovation. This is repairs needed to keep the building in its current configuration, making it safe, secure, and up to code. Some of the code deficiencies we have in the building are security doors. We don't have any security doors. The building wasn't built with multiple stages so when you go to a new building today, they'll buzz you in one door, they'll make sure who you are before they'll let you in. We don't have a system. We have a security guard that once you're buzzed in, you're in the building. So if you're going to the restaurant, cosmetology, early childhood education, you have to navigate through the school, through the students frequently, which is not the best. We have zero fire suppression at all. The building wasn't built with sprinklers inside. That would have to be added. The wiring is 50 plus years old. In order to renovate and repair, you'll have to rewire the building. All the plumbing, again, is in the slab. We frequently have things pop. I get a phone call from Dr. Maguire, and they'll be excavating, trying to find out where the water came from. Because water comes out here doesn't mean that's where it's broken. It's following path of least resistance, and it could be halfway down the building. Last year, we had a year before, a major water break and lost our whole server farm. Luckily, we had insurance and it helped, but when you take the electronics away from the kids, it makes learning very difficult. The ramps, we're not an ADA compliant. We're not even ADA anything. We happen to have ramps. I don't know if you've been to the building. Show of hands who's been to the building before. So our ramp system, our ramps are at 12 degrees, which means wheelchairs sometimes have to go up backwards because it can't push somebody up. Our doorways are pocketed. We can't get a gurney or wheelchairs into some of the rooms because of the way the doors were constructed way back then. Our elevator is about a foot short of being able to have an ambulance gurney in it. So if something happens up top, we got to run the ramps. Going back to repairing the building, that $165 million, which is actually not $165, we just had it re-reviewed by our estimating company, and it's more towards $183 now. That's an assessment. That's not, it can be bonded, but it won't get reimbursed by the state. It will mean that yearly the towns will be assessed the amount of money to pay that bond. It will be far greater than if we're funding a new building. That is the worst case scenario. We don't want to go there. And we'll still have a 50-year-old building that we put lipstick on. You know that term. As Dr. Maguire was talking about the exterior, the windows are 50 years old. Some of them don't close all the way. We put a little bit of duct tape on them. We do a nice job. When they built the building, as they were building the blocks, they would lay the windows in and block around them. So we don't even have the ability, without taking off the whole concrete fascia of the building to put new windows in. So everything that will need to be done will be a major, major excavation and repair. Students will still be there. It's not like we can kick them out. It's not like we can only do it during the summer months. This will go on for years and years and years, and the kids are going to come home and they're going to say, I'm having problems breathing because there's dust in the building. Not that there isn't dust already, because again, we're a vocational building and there's trades going on, but they clean it. This will be added on top of it. So there's a tremendous safety factor. There's some danger. Dr. Maguire will probably have to have a trailer out in the back parking lot because we're going to have to remodel the front of the building. All this stuff takes time. It's not the avenue we want to go to. I hate being the doom and gloom guy, but that is what will happen to us.
I think, it sounds like the manufacturing stuff doesn't make any sense, but I do have a question. When you talk about a delay, if this does not pass, do you have to go to the end of the line with the MSBA? It's really sad how much money the state's giving. That's terrible. I have talked to the state reps, and I encourage everyone to talk to the state reps and our state senators, and this should really change. 29% is crazy. But what would happen if it doesn't pass? Can you come back in 2 years?
Yeah, so if we do, though, this is the part that is the people I don't think realize is the escalation of what, if we're looking at $285 million right now, with an $82 million, $200 million basically spread out, what would we be looking at in 2 years? So we have behind us in this pipeline process, it's called, with the MSBA, we have a couple of schools that are similar to ours in Haverhill, up in Haverhill, Whittier Tech. There's articles all over the place. I refer to them again because they're coming at $400 million, so it's every couple of years, yeah. So the process takes a little while, yeah. And Whittier's right around the same, a year or so behind us with it. Diamond, Votech, and Fall River had a situation with we've worked very closely with the town of Franklin, step by step, to make sure that we're in compliance with what their requirements are. Unfortunately, that wasn't the case with Diamond, Votech, in Fall River. And they had wanted to put in this big geothermal loop where you dig down and get the warmth out of the ground and use that to heat the building. And that seemed like a terrific idea until they went to get the permit, and the town, the city of Fall River, would not give them the permit because they're too close to the reservoir. And the town was afraid that if they dug that many geothermal wells, then it would disturb the sediment and the reservoir would become contaminated. So now they had to go back to the drawing board, and just being delayed, it ended up with putting them over by $50 million. It's crazy. It's just crazy the amount that as we wait. Cape Cod Tech, which opened in 2019, was $128 million, and here we are. So that's another very realistic issue, is that the longer we wait, the more it is. Yeah. Yeah. So it is. So that's a great question too. Her question was about the state reimbursement and state aid, and people that have been at anything I've spoken before know that we do work very closely with our legislative delegation in this area to try to address these projects. Representative Scanlon in North Attleboro and Feeney, Senator Feeney in Attleboro have drafted legislation to address the reimbursement rate. And that language has 70-something co-sponsors on it, which is wonderful. And it made it through both the House and the Senate and is now with the Education Committee. So that legislation, what we're asking for is a higher reimbursement rate. And we're also asking for, on this Mass School Building Authority, the MSBA, is that we're asking that we have seats on their board of directors that have a vocational school background. They have 17 board members right now. We're asking that they increase it to 19. And the reason is because these VOTEC schools are starting to come through this process, but the MSBA doesn't understand what we do. They reimburse us at the same rate as a comprehensive school when it costs more to build a VOTEC building. You have to, an English classroom is an English classroom, but my dental classroom, I have to line with lead. So it's more to build that, right? When we went in front of the MSBA to get the reimbursement, they cut our reimbursement for the library in half because they thought that only half of the kids would need to use the library because we're a VOTEC school. But they didn't give any more reimbursement for the lead, right? So it's just kind of a kooky reimbursement. Part of this legislation that I talked about is asking for seats on their board of directors so that you have a voice in the room, and for that reimbursement rate to be a true 75 to 90% reimbursement as opposed to the 52.6% of eligible. So those are just a couple of things that are in that legislation. Another piece of that legislation is asking for a trust fund to be established in the Commonwealth to address these buildings. So what happens now with it is it'll go back, hopefully, read favorably out of the Education Committee, and then it will go back to the House and Senate and then to the Ways and Means. We'll see. There are 9 VOTEC schools right now in this process of having a building addressed. So that's a lot of towns, that a lot of state reps, a lot of state senators. So let me go here first and then back. Okay. Thank you. No. Mm-hmm.
It was quoted that it was 4%.
Yeah.
Is that locked in, or is that what you hope it to be, which we know that the interest rates are almost 8 to 9%?
Yeah.
For commercial now?
Yeah, our financial advisor provided that number as more of a worst case scenario. Longer term rates are more stable than short term rates. If this project was going through pre-COVID, we'd probably borrow short term notes at 0.3, 0.4% to fund the entire project. But short term rates are approaching 7%, even in the municipal arena. And I've talked to our financial advisor several times. So she provided that information just as a more of a worst case. Over time, any bonds we issue would be callable at a certain time in the process. So we would obtain a lower rate at that time. So it's kind of, we're hoping that's worst case, but we haven't borrowed any money for this project as of yet.
You've borrowed no money, you have no locked in.
No. No.
So you are at the bank's.
We're at the mercy of the market at this point in time.
Yeah, everybody is, yeah. Yep.
Everybody is, but if you're not locked into an amount, in my opinion, it appears that what you're quoting is going to be higher because of the fact you're not locked into a
Yeah.
specific rate.
And we can't lock in, or we can't borrow any money until the project gets approved.
If the vote and
Yeah.
everything else,
Yeah.
I know how the procedure goes.
Yeah.
But when you were quoting 4% online, it's like, it made me question whether or not you were already locked in at a
Yeah.
rate, or you at the mercy
No.
of the bank in the future, which hypothetically, that could make the amount be much higher, be longer than a 30-year. You might possibly have to put in a couple of bands at the end of it to absorb the potential increase. So hypothetically, the sooner you get answers, the better you are. And the other part of this is, when you go for your amount of money, would you be going for the full amount? Would you be doing it in phases?
We would certainly be doing it in phases. $200 million of borrowing would be a big chunk in one lump sum. And this project will take through, destroying the older building, cleaning everything up. I mean, we're talking 2028, 2029 before we know the final number of what this project will cost. So it'll be phased over time.
Assuming that you have an answer this month.
Yep.
Right.
And if it gets procrastinated,
and the rates are not in your favor, neither are the costs of the building materials, which are skyrocketing, as we all know.
Yeah, and the building's not in our favor either.
The rates
Yeah,
are not,
yeah.
the rates are not in your favor. We're just a school. I'm a taxpayer.
Taxpayer.
The rates are not in your favor.
Your
So
favor, yeah.
Ideally, we'd like to deal with it now. In locking in, so, locking in for long-term now, what if the rates come down?
Well, that's what, reading just from your page, you said that the number was premised on a 4% rate.
Correct.
Which made me wonder if you had locked
Right.
in at that 4%, because nothing is 4%
We're
right
not,
now.
long-term bond market, we can still get 4%. But we can't borrow money or sign to borrow money until the vote goes through.
Exactly.
That's why it's
Well,
really
that's why
important.
I questioned it, because we've been through it here in this town with the middle school, we did not have an override for any of these buildings. One plus factor for Jim and his finance committee, or not the finance committee, but his finance group, is that we did the police department, the fire department, this building, and a building for DPW in one fiscal year and no override. So now we're doing the middle school, which will be online next fall, hopefully. We're familiar with what's going on, and it's a shame that it's in the time period it is, and unfortunately, as you said, you're not the only school. There are other technical schools that are in the same.
Yeah, so we'll keep working with that. We'll keep pushing that piece of it, and hopefully, yeah. So right now, I'll also point out that your town select board had written in support of the they've known about this for a little bit, and they wrote to encourage the people in the area to support the legislation. So that I will say that's great. Walpole was very proactive with that. The bill right now sits with the House Committee of Education, the Joint Committee of Education. So you can write to them and say that you would like it to be moved out into favorably from them. Yeah. Okay, so we have right here.
I don't know what it is for Walpole, but for Tri-County, it's about 17,300 per student, keeping in mind that it's very expensive to educate within the trades.
Right here, yeah. Yeah. All right, so there's two questions. The first question is, how does the vote work? Is it town by town? So on October 24th, if you picture all of the 11 tri-county towns as one great big town, that's how the vote is looked at. It's however many people come out collectively. And it's 50% plus one way or the other, whether it passes or whether it fails. So it's not whether Walpole residents are in favor and Sherburne says no, it's not that at all. It's collectively all of the residents counted up that come out to vote on that day. And as far as the assessment that you see on the page that Mr. Lee had done was, if you were to do a debt exclusion, now it's up to the towns. Each of the 11 towns has, it's within their purview of how they will handle their piece of this. It's not up to Tri-County how each town will handle their portion of this. Some towns have figured a way to have it in their budget. Other towns will be doing a debt exclusion for it. And if that were to be the case, the average that our financial advisor had come up with by town based on your tax rates is on a $700,000 house, it would increase your taxes by, what is it? $125.78. No, and it's not the same in all towns. They have different rates. So. Yeah, that's why it looked like this. Yeah. Yeah. Right. Yeah, it depends. It depends. Franklin is. It depends. People have this. It's mixed support. Yeah, I don't know what. So.
The towns also might be more in favor of it because they recognize. No, that your choice of words is fine, and I understand the question. I want to make the point that towns could look at this and say, this is a good investment for us, so that our kids that live in the town have different options. It's a great option for kids of all different learning abilities and interests that we have a school like Tri-County for Walpole. There's charter schools that they can go to. There's private schools kids go to. We have a wonderful high school, but not every kid is the same. And so I think as a community, we should be happy that we have a place like Tri-County for our kids to go. And, some towns send a lot of kids, and those towns might say, yeah, it's going to cost us more, such as North Attleboro. It's going to cost them more than Walpole per taxpayer. But they might say, this is a great opportunity for our kids. And I hope Walpole says the same thing.
So the question is about the outreach for the kids in 5th, 6th, and 7th, 7th, and 8th grade. And we do have a presenter that goes out to the middle schools, and she does a presentation for all 8th graders. She brings some of the current students from the town that are at Tri-County, like to Walpole, for instance. And then at the beginning of November, on a Saturday in November, we have an open house where the building is open for the day, and the kids can come in and try the different programs. They bring their parents and see, whether it's for them or not. We have a career day for grade 7 where the students can come in and just walk around and check it out, and then that way they know in grade 8 whether or not they'd be interested. Yep. Yeah, so the 7th graders will come to us, and then we have for grades 5 and 6 a summer program that we have that's open for them to come if they wanted to come to learn about engineering or cars or whatever, carpentry, whatever. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah. Yeah. Right, we're doing bit by bit, and we do have. It was August 30th that it was approved by the MSBA. So since August 30th, we've been somewhere every day. The unfortunate part here too is we don't have big, we don't have the globe, right? That we can put an article in that all 11, right, and all 11 towns will get the article. So we've done cable shows, we've done cable shows, we've done radio, we've done a couple of videos that we're putting out there, and it's trickling out now in bits and pieces, and then a lot of these, yeah. And in the evening ones, we have the evening ones. We ran 4 community events at the school, and we had only a handful of people that came to them, which is why we decided to take it on the road. And
in this time of modern media, there is no one source. We could go to the Globe. That costs so much money. We can't go to the Globe. We have a political action committee. The name it. The Municipal Ballot Committee that has been trying to raise money so that we could put the word out. Because nowadays, if you want to geofence with Facebook, that costs money. If you want to do a direct mailing, that costs money. Everything costs money. The school can't be on the hook for this. The school can say there is a vote. The school can't say, vote yes. I can say, as a resident in Norfolk, vote yes. I'm not a paid employee at the school. So we've been trying to raise money. Is there a link to it on the website? The Municipal Ballot Committee? It's on Facebook. I know
Not on the
that.
school's website. No, it's independent.
And we're raising money, $10, $20, $50 at a time. This is going to fund, we'll have some signs out there that should be coming out hopefully by the end of this week. It is difficult. Everything costs money, and if you don't really have money, you only have 120 days to raise money to then have people be aware of it, it can be difficult. And we struggle with this. We've learned a lot of lessons.
Yeah, wow.
And we've been told that we're more proactive than a couple of the school projects that have been done recently. That they've noted that you've done a really good job getting it out. We feel like we're not getting enough out there. We're doing it all the time, but you guys can spread the word for us better than we can. We can direct you to our website, but you've got to, spread the word on social media, because that's really how everybody gets their information. Or, there are a couple local papers. There's been some articles, but not everybody reads that stuff either. So we are trying as hard as we can. We want everybody involved. Another note is that remember that this building is 1/11th yours. It's not a building we're building for students. It's a building that Walpole owns 1/11th of, and you should be trying to use that building. Adult ed, events, you're a little farther away, so it's kind of a drive to get over there. But if there's space needed to do a function and space is available, you're welcome to come and use our space. It's your space. We're not a secret building on a hill. We're just a building that Walpole owns a part of that happens to be in Franklin.
You had a question. I'm sorry. You keep raising your hand, and I pick everybody else. Yeah. Yeah. That's a good question. Yeah, it is, because there are a lot. I mean, you look at Harvard, right? Those buildings are 100 whatever years old. The nature of what this building does is what the issue is, with it being a vo-tech school and having the constant wear and tear of those programs. The academic classrooms look like any other academic classroom. They might have asbestos tiles as opposed to what's modern now because it was built in the 70s. But the other piece is that when the building was built, all the plumbing and all of the sewer and all of the electrical, everything was encased in cement through the whole building. It's not accessible to be able to repair or to be able to renovate or renovate. To pull out the plumbing and put new plumbing in would have to jackhammer the floors. It's a lot different than some other types of buildings. And then again, the space on the outside of it with the corrugated sort of stone brick, it seeps energy. It bleeds energy out it, and it wasn't something they considered when they built it. Yeah. Yeah, so that's a great question too, though, because this building, we're saying 50 years, who knows how much longer it will last, and I'll tell you why. Because everything that we have for this building for systems will be outside of the walls. You see it in new buildings now when you go in and you see the air conditioning ducts. You see the conduit that the electrical comes through. You see the pipes right there, right in front of you that the plumbing goes through. This building will be like that as well. So the hope is that it will last longer than 50 years, but we're saying 50 years, yeah. But everything will be accessible. We'll be able to get to everything in this new building. Did you have something you wanted to add to that?
That was a really good question. I asked that same question.
Yeah, he did.
They said, if you want to build a building to last 100 years, it's going to cost you $1 billion, because they don't build buildings that way anymore. That's why those old ones last so long. Labor was pennies back then, 100 years ago. Cost of material was pennies back then. It would just cost so much money, it'd be staggering. When this building was built, think about coming out of the 60s, going into the 70s. It was modern, it was trendy, it was new revolutionary materials, hung in new cool ways, and then 50 years later you go, that was a bad idea. I was just in Boston for the weekend. Look at Boston City Hall. When they built it, people went, that's amazing. Now it is voted, they told us on the duck tour, the #1 ugliest building in America. #1. But when it came out,
I didn't
so
know.
the answer is blame the architects.
Thank you. Yes. Yeah. No. No, I wouldn't say that about Tri-County. They do a great job at that school with the maintenance piece. Well, it's 50 years old. You have to replace things from time to time, and this has lived its useful life. Yeah. So.
When I started looking at this, I had some of those questions you might have. And I went online, looked up school buildings. How long should a school building last? And what they said was 30 to 40 years, and you're talking major renovation. 50 years, end of its life. And right in the pamphlet, 60 years abandoned. And that's, on a that's national average. So what's happening is, buildings are like trees or plants. They don't last forever. We think they last forever, but they're not going to. And this building is coming to the end of its functional life. And if you've heard that term before, we heard it in Walpole about the Bird Middle School, that basically it got to a point where it was going to cost a lot more to fix it, talking about the Bird Middle School, than to come in and update it with a new school. So that's really what we're looking at. And I've seen the maintenance at Tri-County. The maintenance staff does a good job over there. They're trying to keep it together, but it's also 50 years old now, and the next 10 years aren't going to get any better for the school. So that's why, if anything, I think the schools, we're being proactive. We're saying, let's get out ahead of this before we have a school that's on the verge of being abandoned. Okay.
Thank you. You do run out of Band-Aids, yeah. Hi. Yes. Well, thank you. And we'll keep trying for as much as we can, and Mr. Johnson's heard me say this 100 times, but I live in Carver, and Carver is part of the Old Colony Votech school system, which is also in the MSBA pipeline. They're behind us a couple of years, and that school's looking at a price. It's 500 kids, as we're 1,000. Carver's Old Colony's 500 kids. And they're looking at a price tag of over $300 million for that school. They're behind us in the process. So if you talk about that divided among 500 kids, what my tax dollars, right? So and Carver's not a rich community. I'm going to be very clear about that. We're the little cranberry growing cranberry, next to Plymouth. I moved there as a single parent years ago because I could. I couldn't afford anything else at that point. So it just it's not. You just can't keep doing it. So that's why I keep pushing with the state with it. And as Mr. Mushnick said, the federal government too there's so much money that they've put out to schools to use for COVID relief, the CARES Act, and all of these other things that the schools just didn't spend. And at some point, the federal government's going to claw that money back. So 3 times now, we've gone down to Washington, D.C. to say, hey, when you claw that money back, spend it on the VOTEC school buildings. Just get them out of the way so that all the towns don't have to worry about them. And we just keep saying it because, they make the money there and they spend the money there and they need some ideas. That's the way we look at it. We were just with Senator Warren's office the week before last. And Congressman McGovern, he's from the, little west of us. But and Neil and so forth, and Auchincloss, we've met with him. He was supposed to come to Tri-County last Monday, but with the shutdown looming, he ended up back in D.C. But we'll constantly be meeting with them to try to ask while we're doing simultaneously. And our best hope is that we get it approved and get more money for it at the same time. Yeah. But this is the worst case scenario, what we're talking about today. Well, thank you very much. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, we appreciate it. So tonight, we're back here in Walpole tonight with the same presentation. But Mr. Mushnick and I will be here tonight. Mr. Haynes will be in North Attleboro with the North Attleboro folks, and then we have another group that will be in Rentham. So, and tonight is at the library. Yeah.